one ever at CNN during this time, when they were all saying it's horse dewormer, everyone was repeating, no one ever said, we're talking about the veterinarian ivermectin.
That's because
we're not talking about the ivermectin that doctors prescribe.
Right.
No one ever said that. But listen, you told me I should apologize. So what do you think I should apologize for? And then I'll tell you what I think you should apologize for.
I know what you think I should apologize for. Obviously, there was so much talk that they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like
You did it.
No. Okay,
Yes,
good.
you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the clips.
You said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No.
I'll go find
First
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I watched it.
I'm not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The
here's
clip
point.
I'm talking about wasn't on there, and it's
Look,
absolutely
we
there.
were
Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Go ahead.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh my God. What person? You know, you talk about cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's
No
what
one
it
has
is.
to shame them. They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now,
This
Chris.
is
Chris,
a
you can't
dewormer.
apologize for that. You weren't being clear that it was this,
right.
and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not
You
being
were talking
dishonest.
about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about
I
this
was-
version of ivermectin. Come on,
I
man.
was
A couple of weeks ago, Patrick Bet-David hosted a 3-hour debate between former CNN star Chris Cuomo and Dave Smith, who's a libertarian podcaster. And not surprisingly, Dave Smith mops the floor with Chris Cuomo. Now, I haven't extensively listened to Dave Smith, but I have seen him here and there, and he comes across as a genuine, intelligent, articulate person out there searching for the truth. What I have seen of him, he comes across as a careful person who does his research and makes sure he knows what he's talking about before he opens his mouth. And because of that, he often has some insightful commentary on politics or current events. Now contrast that with Chris Cuomo, who's basically a former propagandist for CNN, and his whole gig is coming out and repeating talking points and pretending to be a serious person, pretending to be a serious journalist on a network that pretends to be serious news, but really that just feeds partisan talking points to a sympathetic audience. But if you take that fish out of water and put it in a totally different environment that it's not adapt to live in, say the podcast world in a genuine debate, then you're going to see that fish flounder. So I would expect Chris Cuomo to get destroyed in a debate between him and someone like Dave Smith. Now the debate's 3 hours long. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. I'm just going to highlight some of the juiciest parts. But there's an overarching theme throughout the debate, basically challenging Chris Cuomo to apologize for some of his professional behavior at CNN during the COVID years, and how they covered COVID, how they covered lockdowns, how they covered vaccines and vaccine mandates, how they characterize people that were reluctant to go out and get the vaccine. Cuomo was pressed on this a few times, basically refuses to apologize, refuses to take any responsibility or admit any fault, nor is he even critical of CNN, which in my mind just exposes him as the shallow, childish person that I already suspected he was. Watching much of this debate was like watching a child that got caught dead to rights stealing from the cookie jar, but still insists on emphatically denying it. Imagine you're interrogating this child with videographic evidence, saying, "Look, I have you on camera taking cookies from the cookie jar," and the child just, "No, that wasn't me. I didn't do that." That's kind of how much of this debate comes across. And they even do just that. They have like highlight reels from CNN broadcasts where they show Don Lemon, Chris Cuomo, other CNN hosts, and actually other hosts from different cable news networks demonizing the unvaccinated and just generally stoking fear and hysteria during the pandemic. And confronted with this, Chris has nothing in the way of an apology, nothing in the way of an admission of fault. nothing in the way of my colleagues and I in the media got it wrong. So I'll highlight some of those points in the debate.
Why people are frustrated with this conversation that we're having today. Why don't you play the highlight reel, Rob, the Joker one, if you know which one I'm talking about. Just play this one, and this isn't just you. This is what we had to hear.
That's not me?
No. Every day we had to hear. Play this clip, and then I'm going to go to another one, and I'm going to turn it over to Dave.
That's the guy who bankrolled Osama bin Laden's daughter.
Play the clip.
The unvaccinated. You are the problem. It is the unvaccinated who are the problem. Period. End of story.
The only people that you can blame, this isn't shaming, this is the truth. Maybe they should be shamed, are the unvaccinated.
It's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks.
Anyone you came into contact with will blame you, as will the rest of us who have done the right thing by getting vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
I think it's time to get our moral house in order, Anderson. It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
All of us vaccinated folks are going to start wearing masks to protect the unvaccinated folks. It's called a Christian value.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
People are not behaving honorably. The unvaccinated are basically saying, well, it's open season for me. I can do whatever I want as well.
The unvaccinated are basically beating their breasts and running around the country saying, we don't care, we're living free, and so forth.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
The unvaccinated, a group that includes children and people acting like children. And the rest of us are starting to get pissed off.
The vaccinated feel the unvaccinated are making me upset or angry.
This is not about freedom or personal choice.
Well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom.
The other day, Howard Stern weighed in with a much different approach. Take a look.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Their freedom.
But you're treading on our freedom and you're making other people sick, and really you're killing other people.
The anti-vaxxers, they seem to have a thing for death and home remedies.
The anti-maskers turned anti-vaxxers are not just putting their own lives at risk. If that was the issue, we could just say that we can watch them compete to win place or show in the Darwin Awards.
We have to start doing things for the greater good of society, and not for idiots who think that they can do their own research.
And don't get me started on the lunatics who won't take any of the COVID vaccines.
Life is too short to be an ass. Life is way too short to be ignorant of the promise of something that is helping people worldwide.
Maybe you're doing it because you're disconnected or disorganized. Maybe you have some sympathetic psychological reasons. But maybe you're just being antisocial.
Oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are.
Those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
The unvaccinated should be taxed. They should pay more for health care.
We need to start looking at the choice to remain unvaccinated the same as we look at driving while intoxicated.
We're going to see, and I've said, almost two types of America.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack, yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo, rest in peace, Wheezy.
Pointing back to the unvaccinated who are really creating a problem in this country, every death that we are seeing from COVID could have been prevented.
Literally, the only people dying are the unvaccinated. And for those of you spreading misinformation, shame on you. Shame on you. I don't know.
See, that's the frustration. How many guys are frustrated just watching this? Who's getting upset just watching this, right? So,
I love how they interject these montages of how people in the press, Chris Cuomo and others, his colleagues behaved during the pandemic, during the push to vaccinate everybody. And look at how they demonize just anybody who decided not to get vaccinated. No context, no parsing of who's at risk of developing severe COVID and who's not. And I already made my video on this. If you're interested, it's called Never Forget What They Did During COVID. But I'm not anti-vax. I've said this, and I believe Dave Smith says this at some point during the debate. Like, there is an argument for if you're very old or if you're very sick and you've never gotten COVID before, there is a strong argument that you're definitely at risk of developing severe COVID. At least 2020 and 2021, when the first variants were going around, you were definitely at risk of developing severe COVID. And hey, taking this experimental vaccine might have been your best option. But it's also been clear since early on in the pandemic that we know who the high-risk people are. If you're old and or you have a lot of comorbidities, meaning you're already sick and have a suppressed immune system, then you're at much higher risk of developing severe COVID. Much like, the typical flu season. The flu season, for most people, doesn't pose much of a threat. However, if you're very old, if you're very, very sick, you can contract the flu and it can take you out. Similar with COVID, depending on your situation, it might pose a great threat, it might pose not much of a threat at all. But they're not parsing any of that out in that montage. They're just demonizing ordinary people. Maybe they're young, maybe they're healthy, maybe they've already had COVID and gotten over it, and they don't want to take this experimental vaccine. And here they are being demonized in mainstream, quote-unquote, news platforms. That's what people are pissed about, and that's what, they're not going to just turn the page and pretend like this didn't happen. People like me, we want accountability. We want the people that got it so wrong to admit that they got it wrong. And if they're not willing to do that, in my mind, I think, okay, these people learned nothing, and they certainly can't be trusted in the future. They're too busy being wrong about the next thing, presumably, that they can't take any responsibility for their part in getting it wrong during the COVID episode. The quote-unquote trust the science people clearly are not interested in science. They're not interested in analyzing the data. Because if they were, they'd know that extended lockdowns, there's no evidence that extended lockdowns did anything to curb COVID deaths or even slow the spread of cases. And you can find that out by just comparing and contrasting areas that had severe lockdowns and areas that had no lockdowns at all. There's no smoking gun in the data that showed that lockdowns did any good. And they're not without cost. They did tremendous damage to people's livelihoods. They did tremendous damages to people's emotional and psychological health. If you shut the world down and isolate people, wouldn't you know it, suicides go up. Drug and alcohol abuse rates go up. People start dying of all kinds of other things. They're afraid to go to the hospital, so they don't get their cancer screenings. They don't get their heart screenings. All because you're hyper obsessing over one particular risk factor, to the point of ignoring every other risk factor or ignoring every other unintended consequences of your lockdown policies. The same could be said with mask mandates. There's no evidence that mask mandates did any good. There's no evidence that school closures for a year and a half did any good. And there's plenty of evidence that they did a lot of harm to the children that are now behind in their academic development, behind in their social development, because they were locked down and schools were closed and they weren't interacting with people like they normally would. And again, if you really want to follow the science, if you really want to look at the data, there's no smoking gun that these policies were at all effective, and a ton of evidence that they did a lot more damage. So yeah, at the very least, I want people that were spearheading the draconian COVID policies to admit how wrong they got it. But it probably won't happen in most cases because they're too busy being wrong about the next thing. And there's sad, pathetic egos that are desperately trying to protect their view of themselves, won't allow them to admit that they got it wrong. And in fact, a lot of people they were demonizing actually got it right. I knew early on that the average person that died of COVID was in their 80s. And a lot of the outliers, the people that were younger and dying, had a lot of comorbidities. I knew that it was a very specific segment of the population that was high risk of COVID, and a lot of other people were at very little risk of COVID. In my mind, our policies should have been constructed to protect the most vulnerable and let the rest of the population get on with life. I knew that early on. Why, if you were on the other side, why didn't you know that? But certainly a big part of the blame lies with the media, who were pumping out hysteria and fear-mongering for 18 months during COVID.
What do you think the chances are that you would have to go to the hospital if you got COVID? And Democrats thought that was way higher than Republicans. 41% of Democrats, and the answer is between 1 and 5%.
Okay.
41% of Democrats thought it was over 50%. Another 28% thought it was 20 to 49%. So 70% of Democrats thought it was way, way, way higher than it really was. Liberal media has to take a little responsibility for that, for scaring the shit out of people.
Audience there, you could feel how quiet they are and how afraid of laughing they are because he's calling out their machine. It is the Democrat machine that made Democrats go COVID crazy. It is the Democrat and media machine, right? It is the cable news networks, it's big tech, all that monstrous machine we're always talking about that has caused a certain set of people that used to be sane moderates to all go bananas.
You know, if you got the biggest microphone and you were fear-mongering and getting it wrong for a year and a half, 2 years, well, yeah, you should be held accountable. You should be contrite. You should apologize. But yet Cuomo refuses to do that during this debate.
So, Dave, when you see this yourself, either one of you guys can take the lead on this. When you see this here, do you think there's a part of it where there's a community? I call the establishment, you call the establishment, whatever you want to call it. They almost want the season to be gone without there being an accountability on the people that push the stuff to us, whether it's Fauci, whether it's NIH, whether it's CD, whoever you want to put on that. Do you think they quietly want this thing to move on and we focus on other issues that we had?
Oh, yeah, of course. I mean, clearly they don't actually want to have like a reckoning about any of this. And the thing that, I mean, for me and I'm sure a lot of people in this room, it's like it makes your blood boil to watch this and kind of relive it and remember that, yeah. And just to think that, right, like you just mentioned the stock of big pharma companies and how much money they were making off of it. Look.
This is Pfizer, by the way. Yeah. Check this out.
It's going pretty good for them. Hey, by the way, did that ever come up on CNN? You
Yeah.
think they ever had that graphic up there?
Yeah.
Did they?
Yeah, because the whole
Yeah,
point
right.
was they were making money. They were also given absolute liability against any suits for the vaccine injuries.
Yeah.
And
pretty corrupt.
And it was a very weird combination of things we had
Yeah,
never
so
seen
maybe-
before. And the company said, we won't make it under Operation Warp Speed's guidelines unless you insulate us from litigation for this process. And the government said, okay, we need it.
And yet you guys spent every day, all day long, demonizing American people who were skeptical about this, demonizing the people rather than demonizing the powerful.
So
listen,
but wait.
2000, listen, hold on, let me just say for a second.
All right, go ahead.
2020 was the largest transfer of wealth in human history. And it was from the working and middle class in America to the millionaires and billionaire class. That you can go look up the data on that. They got richer than ever before.
So you think that's what the vaccine was about?
No, my point is that that went completely uncovered by the corporate press. And instead, they were just trying their best because the whole thing was, it was an election year, and you guys, the Russiagate thing had failed. And so this was the new attempt now to ruin Donald Trump and make sure he didn't get reelected. And everything was framed
how
through
is it
that
supposed
lens.
to hurt Trump? He gave us the vaccine.
Okay, first of all, when you're talking about different things here. Praising the vaccine did not come in until Trump was gone and Joe Biden was in, okay? It was right there. If anybody remembers at the time, as of the presidential debates, Kamala Harris said, I'll never take that vaccine if that's a Trump vaccine, and you and nobody else at CNN vilified her for saying
yes,
that.
They did.
No, they didn't.
Yes, they
did. It was
did.
not until
Yes,
the
they did.
following year in 2021 when the vaccines
That's
were
not
rolled
true.
out. And yes, it is true. Chris,
No,
you can keep
you-
interrupting me.
you want
Chris,
it to
do you
be
think,
true,
do you,
but it's not
no,
true.
No. Chris, could you play me a montage like that of people demonizing Kamala Harris for not taking the vaccine?
No.
When she said that? No, you couldn't. Okay, so I'm right.
Oh,
anyway.
that's the standard?
Yes, that's the standard.
So
yes.
You just showed a montage, or whatever, Grabian's montage. And by the way, there are plenty more people on Fox News who are saying the same thing. You have Cavuto in there. I'll give you credit for that.
For the record, Fox
But-
News was terrible on this as well.
But what's
100%.
what's the point? The point is, so everyone was in on it?
No,
everyone was in on it?
just the corporate media
Come on.
and
Listen,
the government.
So
no, not everybody.
So all
no,
of
here's
these
the
people
thing,
who get
Chris,
paid by contrast, right? These companies get paid by contrast, meaning they are looking for ways to be different than the other ones. But they just all wound up saying the same thing, which was just completely untrue.
Yeah, okay, so again, to take on what you just said, no, not everyone, and not everyone who gets paid. Joe Rogan is bigger than every single show at CNN combined and gets paid more than every single person at CNN combined. And he was 100% right about this thing through the entire time.
No, he wasn't.
Yes, he
No, he
hold
wasn't.
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on. Let me get this point out here.
Tell me what he was right about.
Okay, how about, you know what you just revealed last month on Pat's show about ivermectin?
Yeah.
Joe Rogan was saying that, and you were smearing him for saying that.
Yeah.
You literally said he's taking horse dewormer.
Yes.
He should be ashamed of himself. You pleaded with your audience to not take it.
Yes.
Then you come back around and you go, hey, Pat, you know what I just found out? Turns out this thing isn't for animals. Turns out humans are. But Chris,
that's
a
not-
5-minute Google
but that's-
search and you would have known that.
First of all,
how do you not
hold on.
apologize to Joe Rogan?
Listen, do you know who disagrees with you? Do you know who disagrees with you? The people who make ivermectin disagree with you.
Hold on. What do they disagree with me about?
That the drug should not be taken as a standalone for COVID-19.
I never said it should.
That's what Rogan was saying.
No. He did not. No, listen. See, this is the thing, Chris. That is a lie. That is a blatant lie. Joe Rogan. So you just pretended that I said it's a standalone for COVID. No. Here's what it always was. Here's what Joe Rogan said. My doctor prescribed it to me, along with several other medications, just like your doctor prescribed it to you. That's what he said. What I'm saying is that it's not horse dewormer, as you and everybody else at CNN mindlessly repeated.
Now,
what he said, no, let me finish. What he said, and what I'm saying is that it is a medicine that's been prescribed to people millions and I think billions of times. And it was totally demonized. Why? You already said why. You said it 2 years too late, but you already said why.
No, here's
because
why.
no one owned it.
Here's why. What Pat has on his desk right now, you do not want to take, okay? It is the veterinary grade ivermectin. People were so desperate to get it because they were told it was a panacea. It was a cure-all.
By who? Who told them that?
It was online.
Well,
they
you just claimed
it.
Joe Rogan said it. You claimed I said it. Neither of us have said that.
But, so hold on. So why was there a rush on ivermectin?
So I wanted to interject with an interesting aside on the reporting of ivermectin and the problem of people overdosing on veterinary grade ivermectin. This story this is reported by Reason magazine, but this was reported plenty of other places as well. So they have the media fell for a viral hoax about ivermectin overdoses straining rural hospitals. Some people are self-medicating with dubious COVID-19 treatment, but they aren't overwhelming doctors and nurses. So there was a story reported. It initially blew up with Rolling Stone magazine. They came out with the story that this hospital in Oklahoma the ER was being overrun with people coming to the emergency room overdosing on ivermectin. And it turned out the story was totally false. Like, the hospital denied any of this. Not only was their ER not overrun with people overdosing on ivermectin, they didn't treat anybody for overdosing on ivermectin. One hospital served by the doctor quoted in the KFOR article released a statement saying it has not treated any ivermectin overdoses, nor has it been forced to turn away patients. So this is just sloppy reporting. Like, these people didn't bother to fact check their sources. They didn't bother to check with the hospital. They published a story and it turned out to be completely false. Now, I don't doubt that in a nation of 300 plus million people, you can probably find, if not one, maybe a few instances of people overdosing on veterinary grade ivermectin. But it certainly doesn't appear to be as widespread as reported in the often hyped and sensationalized media. Which is yet another perfect example of why I don't consume mainstream news. It's not to say that everything they ever say is completely false. It's just that there's a good chance that it's hype, that it's overstated, that it's exaggerated. The headlines are written to be clickbait. It's just an all-around shit show. So why would I want to waste my time trying to parse through it all, hoping to find the one morsel of truth that may or may not be in their report?
All of a sudden.
Can I tell you my honest opinion about that? Okay, it's that the medical establishment and the corporate media so humiliated themselves that they lost trust with the entire American people. And then, yeah, there were some charlatans online who were saying, "Oh, go take this," and they trusted them.
Please, here's what happened. Okay?
If you think Joe Rogan said, "Take any form of ivermectin you can get, and you'll never get COVID,"
I'm not blaming Rogan. Here's what happened. And
you should be apologizing
and
to him.
again, listen. Listen. Here's what happened. Here's what happened. Also, let me tell you why I think apologies in this context are a stunt, okay? We don't accept apologies. Nobody accepts apologies except as an admission that you weaponize. That's why Trump never apologizes. He's right. Because if you apologize, everybody just beats you over the head with it.
Trump's got a lot to apologize for, and so do you.
I'm just saying,
you both
as a concept, and you should too on this, and I'll tell you why.
What should I apologize for?
Here's what happened. Ivermectin, it wasn't because the media said don't take it, so everyone took it. The media would have never been talking about it unless people were taking it. Use your head. So here's what happens. They're prescribing it like crazy. They actually stop physicians from being able to prescribe it, which I think was a mistake. They then start giving out veterinary grade ivermectin, which, as the word would suggest, you shouldn't take, right? Because,
doctors were prescribing veterinary?
No, people were desperately trying to get it online. They couldn't find it. Okay. Ivermectin is the most studied potential treatment for COVID of all of them, which was a complete waste of money. And it was all done just to play on the politics of this. Merck, that made ivermectin, put out a statement during this saying, we do not advise it to be used for COVID-19. You can't find research that is seen as impressive by the research community that proves that ivermectin is effective in treating COVID-19. Rob can find you 100 studies, right? Listen, you're wrong on this.
No, I'm not.
And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why, because they're mad at me too, by the way. You think you guys are alone?
So,
no.
But why are you taking it
Here's
then?
why. My doctor, I didn't take it during COVID-19. And I didn't take hydroxychloroquine when I was sick with COVID-19, even though a lot of people thought they were being nice by sending it to me. Why? Because the research isn't there. That's why. With long COVID, okay? Not long vax, that's a different thing. If it's going to get recognized as such. I don't know. They won't say that yet. Long COVID, they're now saying exists. There is research. Is it dispositive? No. Do the people on the government levels and the research communities like that I said that I'm taking it? No. Do they think I'm setting myself up for lawsuits? Yes. But my doctor, I believe, is in the vanguard of people who are figuring out long COVID. And she has a lot of the same problems, by the way, with me and with the pandemic that you do. And she has found research, and she has had her own experience in using it in a combination with many other things where she believes it may be able to help. Now, I've been taking it. I don't feel any better. Does that mean it doesn't work? No. But
it's
that's
safe.
why I'm taking it.
It's safe and it's not horse paste.
It is definitely safe, but it's not horse paste because it's not horse paste.
But
that is horse paste.
By the way, no one ever at CNN during this time, when they were all saying it's horse dewormer, everyone was repeating, no one ever said, we're talking about the veterinarian ivermectin.
That's because
we're not talking about the ivermectin that doctors prescribe.
Right.
No one ever said that. But listen, you told me I should apologize. So what do you think I should apologize for? And then I'll tell you what I think you should apologize for.
I know what you think I should apologize for. Obviously, there was so much talk that they don't want you to take ivermectin. Ivermectin is the way to go. Take it. Joe Rogan got better from ivermectin. And by the way, I don't like what people did to Joe Rogan about ivermectin. I don't like
You did it.
No. Okay,
yes,
good.
you did.
Find the clips.
Dude, find the clips. You shamed Joe Rogan.
Find the
you
clips.
said he's taking horse dewormer. You and Don Lemon were chuckling at each other about it.
No.
I'll go find
First
the
of all,
clip.
you just saw the clips.
I watched it.
I'm not chuckling. I'm listening to Don. But
No. The
here's
clip
the point.
I'm talking about wasn't on there, and it's absolutely
look,
there. Here, do we have it? Hold on. Let's play the clip.
Go ahead.
Injecting drugs for animals and horse.
And people telling them to. Oh my God. What person? You know, you talk about cancel culture and who to shame. Ivermectin, a dewormer, really?
They are shaming themselves.
That's what it is.
They're shaming themselves.
So you're taking a dewormer right now.
Chris,
you can't apologize for that. You weren't being clear that it was this, and you know that, dude. You're being so dishonest right now, man.
I'm not being
You were
dishonest.
talking about ivermectin, the drug. You were not talking about this version of ivermectin. Come on,
I
man.
was responding to a situation where we were told that this is what people were searching out to take, and nobody knew what it was going to do to them. Look, I'm taking the drug right now. Obviously, I don't think it's all poison. I stopped calling it the horse drug when, and you can not like it, CNN's chief medical officer, who is Sanjay Gupta, said to me, you shouldn't just call it a horse dewormer. There's a whole legitimate aspect of the drug. I wouldn't use it for COVID-19, but it's not just a veterinary grade. So I stopped calling it that.
So, okay.
And then it went away.
By the way, I don't know if you guys saw this. One of the best moments during the pandemic was when Dr. Gupta, who was just mentioned, went on Joe Rogan's podcast. For all the days of CNN like demonizing Joe Rogan, they send their top doctor out there onto his show, and he goes, why is everyone on your network saying I'm taking horse dewormer? Ivermectin's not. And Dr. Gupta looked down at his lap and went, yeah, no, they shouldn't be saying that.
Well, Sanjay was the one who corrected us. Sanjay was the one who corrected us.
No, actually, after that, he went back and laughed as Don Lemon called it horse dewormer again, and then I guess later corrected you guys. But then there was a moment, and this was the best moment, and you got to remember the context of this. This was during the vaccine passports. Okay, the point when the people like me, and I'm sure a lot of you, were basically turned into second-class citizens, weren't allowed to go into restaurants, weren't allowed to go to sporting events, weren't allowed to go into a lot of different office buildings, things like that, and you, personally, along with everyone at CNN, cheered that on. You mused and joked around when you were interviewing Dr. Fauci about what rights the unvaccinated should have. So Dr. Gupta goes to Joe Rogan and says, it is in the middle of all this. He goes, so are you going to get the vaccine? And Joe goes, no, I just had COVID. Why would I get it? I got natural immunity. It's stronger than the vaccine. And Dr. Gupta went, yeah, that's a good point.
So if not an outright apology, at the very least what I would like to see from a lot of these people is an acknowledgement that they got it wrong, an acknowledgement that they were wrong to demonize young, healthy people who already had COVID. They were wrong to demonize those people for not wanting to get an experimental vaccine. An acknowledgement that the lockdowns, the extended lockdowns, didn't work and they caused a lot more damage in other ways. An acknowledgement that the mask mandates didn't work and were needlessly divisive. An acknowledgement that a better approach in COVID policy would have been to a more targeted approach where you try to protect the most vulnerable people, the elderly and the sick, while letting the rest of us get back to business so that we don't shut down society and cause all sorts of other problems. And why I think this is important is because if they can't acknowledge that they got it wrong, then I have no confidence that they're not going to screw up in the future. No confidence that they learned anything, and they're probably just going to panic and freak out the next time there's some moral panic and cause all sorts of problems and trample on people's rights and generally do what they do. Anyway, that's my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. This isn't obviously the whole debate. I only found a few excerpts. If you want to watch the whole thing, you can go to PBD Podcast. That's Patrick Bet David. The whole thing's 3 hours. They also cover a few other topics. And to be fair to Chris Cuomo, not every one of his takes on these topics is terrible. But if you're interested in it, I'll put a link below, and you can watch the full debate. You've been watching the Fletch Report. If you're hearing this, it means you've made it to the end of the video. But before you click onto the next thing and continue down whatever rabbit hole you're on YouTube or Rumble, I've got a small favor to ask. If you found value in my content and you want to help the channel out, the best thing you can do is share it with somebody else that you think will find value in it. Don't forget to hit the like button. Subscribe if you want to see more. Links to the channel on YouTube and Rumble will be provided below. Additionally, I'm making a Facebook page for the channel as well as a X/formerly Twitter. Feel free to follow me on those platforms as well. If you're feeling exceptionally generous, provided in the description below will be a link to Buy Me a Coffee, which is the online equivalent of a tip jar. Thanks for watching, and thanks for supporting the channel.